Good evening, and thank you for coming out to support your local independent. My name is Evan Perillo, and I'm the events director here at the Brookline Booksmith. I hope you guys will pick up one of our calendars. We've got some great readings lined up with John Hodgman and Larry Doyle next week, and Michael Holly, as well as a night of staff recommendations later in the month. Also, you may have noticed we're filming tonight, so if you could please make sure to turn off all cell phones and things like that, any drum machines you may have on your person. You can follow all of our events through our website, brooklinebooksmith.com, where you can also purchase thousands of ebooks through Google Editions. As we move into a presidential election year, you can be sure to hear a lot about our founding fathers, what they believed, what they said, what they meant to say, and certain parts of the Constitution will doubtless be quoted again and again. Tonight is not about any of that nonsense. It's about the other nonsense. Because tonight we have the pleasure of welcoming back Jay Wexler, professor of law at Boston University. In his first book, Holy Hullabaloos, Wexler explored the division, or lack of division, of church and state with a strange and humorous road trip. In his new book, The Odd Clauses, he examines the foundation of our government, the U.S. Constitution, through its strange and rarely cited provisions, from the state's control of intoxicating liquids to the government's ability to allow private citizens to fight pirates for personal gain. In seeking out the antiquated, the strangely specific, and the just plain odd, Wexler sheds new light on the Constitution in all its glory. And he's damn funny, too. So please join me in giving a big Brookline welcome to Professor Jay Wexler.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out in the rain to this terrific bookstore, and thank you for hosting me here again. BookTV is here filming, so when you heckle me, if you could keep your swearing to a minimum, that would be great. I was on BookTV one other time before in connection with my Holy Hullabaloos book. It was an event in New Mexico, which I thought went pretty well. And then a couple weeks later, the event was on TV, so I tuned in, and was pretty nervous because though I've been on television a couple of times, I had not in a sustained way. So I was really concerned, and I turned it on, and about 5 minutes into it, I realized that every other sentence I say, like an idiot. So I'm like hiding under the blankets. And then 15 minutes into the talk, I got up and I looked at my email. And I got this email from somebody in Hawaii. And it said, I wanted very much to hear what you had to say. However, your habit of interjecting, repeatedly is so distracting that even your humor and pleasant voice did not help. Thanks a lot. That was a nightmare. What I want to do tonight is to explain what my book is about, The Odd Clauses. And I want to spend most of my time, I think, explaining why I wrote the book and why I think it's important to know about the odd clauses of the Constitution. I'll read a short bit or two, not that much, and we'll have questions and answers if you'd like. I can sign books if you're interested. The Odd Clauses does make a fantastic stocking stuffer, provided that the stocking that we're talking about is on the largest side, and that you don't put anything else in the stocking at the same time, because then it won't fit. So, what the book is about. The book is about 10 lesser-known clauses of the Constitution. I'm going to read the first two paragraphs to give you a sense of what I was up to, okay? The Constitution of the United States contains some of the most powerful and well-known legal provisions in the history of the world. The First Amendment, for example, gives us the right to speak our minds without government interference. The Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment stops the state from discriminating against us because of our race and gender. And the Fourth Amendment, as our television crime dramas continually remind us, prevents the police from searching our homes without a warrant. I would bet that in the past 20 years, several hundred books have been written about these important clauses, and for good reason. This book, however, is not one of them. Instead, this book will shine a much-deserved light on some of the Constitution's lesser-known clauses, its benchwarmers, its understudies, its unsung heroes, its crazy uncles. To put it another way, if the Constitution were a zoo, and the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendments were a lion, a giraffe, and a panda bear, respectively, then this book is about the Constitution's shrews, wombats, and bat-eared foxes. And believe me, if you have never laid eyes on a bat-eared fox before, you're in for a treat. So there you go. So I wrote about 10 clauses. I had to winnow it down from about 20 or 25 that I started with. I had to think about why I wanted to include certain clauses and which clauses I wanted to include. And I decided on 10 clauses to discuss that promote or illustrate key points about our government or our democratic functions in very specific ways, and in ways that I thought were interesting to write about and to read about. And so I'm going to tell you what those clauses are pretty quickly before turning to why I decided to write the book. So there's the incompatibility clause, starts the book off, and that's the clause that says that if you're a member of Congress, you can't also be an executive officer, and which may very well disqualify Scott Brown from being in the National Guard, but that's a separate issue. Second is the weights and measures clause, which says that Congress has the power to set the weights and measures for the United States. So if you're ever mad that we don't have the metric system, you should blame Congress. The recess appointments clause is the clause that says that the president can use a recess of the Senate to appoint somebody without Senate confirmation. And one of the interesting questions is what counts as a recess? Is it just the break in between the two sessions of the Congress, or is it like any time they go out for a cigarette? The original jurisdiction clause provides that when one state sues another state, they go directly to the Supreme Court of the United States, which could, though it never does, hold a trial. It actually has done that a few times. But like, for example, when Missouri wanted to sue Illinois because Illinois changed the direction of the Chicago River, sending tuberculosis down to St. Louis, it had to sue directly in the Supreme Court. The natural-born citizen clause is the fifth topic in my book. Among the very few prerequisites for office that are spelled out in the Constitution, this is the proverbial turd in the punch bowl. It says that you can't be president unless you're a natural-born citizen, and you've heard a lot about that in the news, and it's a really stupid clause. Section 2 of the 21st Amendment, you may not know about. The 21st Amendment is the one that ended prohibition. That's Section 1. Section 2 makes it unconstitutional to bring liquor across state line in violation of state law. And it's one of only two places in the Constitution where something is made, where an individual can break the Constitution, which regulates the direct behavior of individuals. The rest of it's about the government. So there are two things you can do if you want to violate the Constitution. You can either engage in slavery, or you can bring a beer across the state line in violation of Rhode Island law. So that's weird. The letters of marque clause it authorizes Congress tells Congress that it can authorize private ships to fight pirates. We'll talk more about that later. The titles of nobility clause says that the government can't make you a duke, and says that the government officials of the United States can't accept a dukeship. The Bill of Attainder prohibits legislative punishment, and the Third Amendment says that the soldiers cannot, the Army can't quarter their soldiers in private houses without consent, a practice that in the 18th century led directly to the Tea Party, the real Tea Party, not our Tea Party. I got the idea for this book about 10 years ago. I was working at the Office of Legal Counsel, which is a small office in the Justice Department, which gives constitutional advice to the executive branch. It's the office which made the news when long after I left, it wrote the torture memo. And even though in law school I learned a lot about the Constitution, you study a lot about the Constitution in law school, you only study certain parts of it. You study the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the panda bears, the lions, etc. But at the Office of Legal Counsel, I had to deal with lots of these little odd clauses that nobody really knows anything about. I certainly didn't know anything about it. One day, my friend Ruby, hi Ruby, my friend Ruby was running around wondering whether President Clinton could accept some sort of bauble or something from an African village, or whether that violated the Titles of Nobility clause. And I said, the Titles of Nobility clause, interesting. What's the Title of Nobility clause? I'd never heard of the Titles of Nobility clause. I don't know what happened in that case. But I decided that very day that I would write a book about these odd clauses, which is something I wanted to do and waited until after I got tenured to do. Now, let me talk a little bit about why I think it's important to write or rather to read, why I wanted to write and why I think it's important for people to read about the odd clauses. I was originally, I have to admit, motivated